Greetings, everybody. It is January 21st of the year 2020. It is a Thursday. It is 2:15 p.m. Central Time, and this is What's the Big Idea? A talk plus show for audacious visionaries. And I am your host, Reagan, and I'm really, really happy to be here with the wonderful Adrienne Marie Brown today. Conversation in co-dreaming, and who knows what else we're gonna get up to in this time. So I'm gonna bring Adrienne right on in, and we're gonna get this thing started. Adrienne, hello.
Hi, Ron. How are you?
I am feeling delicious is the word that's coming.
A delight.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been I have someone in my life that I care about a lot who's going through it right now, and so I've shown up. I've shown up to be with my friend, and it's been such a reminder of showing up is its own set of skills. Like caring is its own set of skills and different kinds of attention. And I've just gotten to be like, oh yeah, how do different people respond to change? How do I respond to change? Yeah. I was laughing because earlier today, before this interview, I did another interview where I had to be kind of fancy dressed, and I didn't have any fancy dress because I grabbed my stuff to come. And so I literally wrapped myself in a towel and threw a necklace on. And I was just like, we're doing this. So it was so nice to have the invitation to this, be like, be comfortable, be at ease, feel delight. And I was like, yes. Okay, great. So yeah, I'm grateful to be here with you.
Likewise. And yes, for everybody tuning in, whether you're tuning in real time or you're watching this recording, there's always an encouragement to be hospitable toward yourself while you're experiencing this show. Welcome yourself with all of whatever you need to be present. And that's the general vibe. Adrienne, what would you like folks to know about who you are and what you're bringing today to What's the Big Idea?
Yeah, I mean, my name is Adrienne Marie Brown. I'm a writer. I am based in Detroit, Michigan, on purpose. And my roots are Southern. I'm an emergent strategist. I'm a pleasure activist. I spend a lot of time thinking about apocalypse and portals and how do we harness our experience as a species towards one that's in alignment with this planet. I'm an auntie. It's my superpower is auntie behaviors. And I'm a Virgo sun. Yeah, those are some things.
Thank you. Yes, I have my first nibbling. She turned 1 while I was out in Cali on December 8th. Wow. And she's such a beautiful little fireball. I'm so obsessed with her tenacity. She has a lot of Capricorn in her chart, and it is over, through, around, get out my way if I want something.
That's right. I'm spending a lot of time right now with a 4.5-year-old nibbling, and she's very in charge of what's going on and how are things going to go. And she just really, the other day she was like, we need to do cosmic kids yoga. And I was like, okay. And she put on this yoga video, and it's just white skinned person doing yoga or whatever. And I was like, I don't know, I'm just going to do my own yoga. And she's like, you'll see, auntie, you'll see. And sure enough, 5 minutes. And I was like, this is super trippy. Let's do it. She was just like, don't try to deny me. We're going to have fun. That's the worldview right now.
Yes. This is what we're doing. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, on the tip of fun and pleasurable things, it's very important for me, and I'm sure for you, in your
Yes.
pleasure activism to talk about pleasure. So I would love to know what in your realm, physically or otherwise, is bringing you pleasure as we gather here virtually today.
Well, I am wearing something that brings me pleasure, which I'm like, maybe I can show you. This is the Black Women Are Valuable sweatshirt
Amen.
that I was recently gifted, and it's Nina, Audrey, and Octavia. And it was given to me by Julesy, who does another like interview podcast process for Smart Brown Girls.
Yes.
I was geeked out about that, and I brought ice cream. Is what I'm like eating right now. So, I'm like, I don't know how to show it to you, but it's black raspberry chip ice cream, and it's Graters, which is a Cincinnati-based ice cream company that is like outstanding.
Okay.
I've got sage going. I've got a candle burning. I've got my water. Yeah. So things smell good, taste good, and feel good over here.
Ashe. Well, my pleasure show and tell is I have these like cosmic earrings. I don't know if you can make this out. Yeah,
beautiful.
That I got from this artist in New Mexico, in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, about a year plus ago. I'm wearing this shirt, which is Forever Mood, Black Liberation, Indigenous Sovereignty by Amber, also known as Melanin Muskogee on Instagram. I got my cold brew, per usual. I heated it up today though, because it's not super warm here in New Orleans.
You can heat up cold brew?
Yeah, because you brew it for the flavor and also potentially for the temperature, but you can pop that shit right on the stove and warm it up.
That's great. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I'm always just constantly amazed by like what y'all are up to.
It's a thing. And then I've got my water with some apple cider vinegar in it for a little kick.
Really?
Yeah.
How is that?
I like it. I mean, I'm into tart, tangy, sour flavors in general. I was like hardcore Sour Patch Kid eater as a child.
You got to know thyself. That makes so much sense.
That's my thing. Tanginess. Oh, and my pleasure with this orange wall. Wait, this way. That's new in my house. It's a new color for that wall in it.
Oh, beautiful.
So enjoyable.
It's bright. It's popping. I love that.
It's like sunset tangerine sherbet.
It's also like an orangish yellow. And it's amazing what happens when the sun comes up in the morning. And it's just like, boom, we are doing this.
Yes.
So, but I also love how it lines up with what's happening in the design.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right. Bet. Adrienne, do you want to share any intentions for our conversation today? Anything on your heart or your spirit?
Every time I do an interview, my intention is just to really be myself in it, just to be present with what is without, trying to please anyone other than my ancestors and my descendants, right? Just to be on time with who I am and how I am right now. So that's my intention, is just to stay true to myself as I am right now.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
What about you?
My intention is to be fully present and to enjoy my time with you. Yeah. That's my intention. All right. So, for those who haven't tuned in before, there is a space on this show each time for myself and my co-dreamer to vent. And my intention around this time is to, I found in practicing visioning and dreaming that sometimes there's stuff on the surface of our consciousness in our bodies, energy that we need to discharge and release so that we can be clear channels for what needs to come through for us. Yeah. So that is the intention for this time. And as queer folks, as Black folks, as folks who are under the boot of many different kinds of oppression, I think it's also important for us to be able to have space and public space held for us to say how we feel and what's going on. So that's what this space is for. And how it's going to work is I'm going to set my little timer on my phone.
Great.
And Adrienne's going to get 2 minutes to say whatever Adrienne needs to say so that we can be present afterward. And once that 2 minutes is up and that little chime comes in, we'll take some deep breaths. We'll focus on that exhale 3 times. We'll continue to release what Adrienne needs to release.
Yay.
I'll set the timer for myself and we'll do the same thing again. And then we'll move into the dreaming space. Does that sound good for you, Adrienne?
Yeah, I'm excited to try that.
All right. So, all right. You let me know when you're ready for your 2 minutes to begin and I'll set the timer.
Ready.
Here we go. Bam.
All right. So 2 things jump to mind for my vent. One is you said it was January 21st, 2020. And I was laughing because part of my vent is just this feeling of being rushed along through time right now. And then I'm like, I've been needing everything to slow down for quite some time. But I'm like, yeah, I still feel like I'm in 2020. Like I feel like that year just flew by in these random ways and just wanting to land in time. Just be like, oh, okay, I'm in 2021, but I need to like get all my parts caught up to me in this time. And so there's a little venting there. And then I think my other big vent today, because yesterday was, you know, the inauguration, is this feeling of wanting more room to just feel what the fuck I feel without other people trying to project or prescribe or correct or police or control what I'm feeling or what other people are feeling. You know, space to feel complex feelings, you know, to just be like, I'm very, 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 very excited that Trump is out of office. I don't think that this empire experiment is going to work. I still think that having improved conditions and like leaders who respond is better. I get to feel all of that. I feel excited about this young Black poet I got introduced to yesterday. I feel joy about the transition happening. It's not tied to supporting the incoming president necessarily. It's just what it is, right? And just being able to be like, oh, those are all my feelings. And then everyone else gets to feel however they want to feel. But just the need for people to encroach on that of like, you're not allowed to feel that because this, you're not allowed to feel that. And the oversimplification that people are constantly demanding. And just being like, you cannot make me feel in a simple way. That's not who I am. And yeah, I really wish that was something that you could filter out. You know, I'm just like, I don't want followers who can't handle complexity. Just go away.
Ashe.
That felt good.
All right, let's do some breathing. So we're going to inhale and focus on that exhale 3 times.
Okay.
So inhaling together and release. Letting that go, honoring the truth of it. Inhaling together and releasing. One last inhale and release. All right.
Okay. Do I set a timer for you or you got your own timer?
I got it. Thank you, though. Here I go. Today, which is 2021, I am sad. I'm sad. I'm so sad. I was really sad yesterday. That was my primary emotion, and really like feeling disequilibrium. Everything felt unstable in a way that for me was very hard. And part of what I'm feeling is the immensity of grief, like the unfathomableness, the unfeelableness for me of the weight of it. I know the weight as a thing and I can't feel it, and that in and of itself is destabilizing to me.
Yeah.
And that we are rushing forward, that we are doing things, that like all those people who were in the building that was raided, that is the Capitol building, went back to work right away. And the sickness of our inability to reckon with what has happened overwhelms me. And as a person who has grieved deeply and understands, in my experience, what is required to actually move through grieving,
Yes.
I am afraid of the consequences of our not doing that individually and collectively when so much has been lost.
Mm.
And I am worried about the sickness that will produce. And it is just like my voice is shaking. It is so hard for me to process it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Whew.
All right, I'll guide us through some breaths
Thank
now.
you.
So let's all together just inhale deeply and release that. And into that empty space, breathe in again. And let it all out.
Mm.
And one more time, just cleansing in. And let it out, let it all out.
Mm. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
And here we are, alive.
And here we are.
And
I
breathing.
love it. I love that our events are like puzzle pieces. I'm like, those are exactly like that's what it is. I'm like, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for picking up the breathing facilitation baton.
I'm just like, I know how I felt after my event. I need to like, yeah, so.
Ooh, child. Okay. So Adrienne, I'm
dreamers,
so
right?
glad to have you here as a, I would say an avowed and avid vision practitioner, dream practitioner in my experience of you. I don't know if you'd identify that way, but that's how I experience a lot of your work in the world.
I aspire for sure. I'm just like keeping it dreamy. You know?
That's the practice. So I would love to kick off the dreaming segment with a pretty open-ended question, which is, what are you dreaming about and visioning for our collective future? What's on your dream space? What is it looking like right now?
Yeah. You know, it's such an interesting moment to have this conversation with you because it's just like, oh yeah, like this is this moment that is very potent.
Yes.
It's like heavy, I think of like a cheesecloth, like full, it's like that moment where it's just like full and like eventually it'll become a cheese. But like it's just like this fullness that like needs to drip through and the spaces are so small that it can't all just let go. So it's just like, I feel like that grief and heavy anger and rage and everything is just sitting in this ball. And yesterday, I tuned in and I watched the inauguration, and there was this moment which we were all expecting, but it was like, I'm a president for everyone. And I was just like, I know what my dream is as I hear that, and it's not like you haven't said things about white supremacy, blah, blah, blah. But in that moment, I was like, my dream is a future in which there doesn't have to be any accommodation of abusive behavior. That's not part of the transformative justice cycle, right? That it's like, actually, we call that in and we're like, how do we actually be with what needs to change? Because that has no place here. And so I was like, my dream would be like, I can't be a president for hate. I won't be a president for hate. I won't be that. But then it's also like, I really identify as a post-nationalist. So these endeavors are always interesting for me because I'm like, there's no center like at a tribal level, there's at a community level, at a village level. There doesn't feel like there's a collective center to hold what needs to be held right now. That this nation state experiment is too large and disparate to actually have that honest, authentic center that's not just fluff and narrative. So I feel like my dream right now is that like, what is the right scale of community and the right size of community, and like upon which lines do we determine that? And I have found for myself, I'm also really dreaming of a centered life and being in a community that is in practice of centering regularly. I keep, noticing, what are we, almost a year, we're like 11 months or whatever into this crisis.
Yes.
And I keep noticing, like, we're all struggling. I'm struggling. We all are having grief. We're having days that are hard to get through. But the people that I'm in close community with all have centering practices and meditation practices and clearance practices and altar practices. And you can really feel the difference, right?
Yes.
Like I can really feel when I'm in relationship with someone who's like, wow, this shit is really overwhelming and totally fucking hard. But I did clear my energy today. I did pray. I have faith in things that are larger than myself, forces at work. I'm leaning on my ancestors. So, I'm not going to be a total asshole to every single person. I'm really self-responsible. I'm responsible for my spiritual hygiene, right? I'm responsible for singing. I'm responsible for like moving my creative energy into the world. And that, compared to folks who are either in total denial of what's happening, and that's like kind of how they're dealing with it, is like just bypassing the dangers and endangering others, or folks who are like trying to navigate it all like logistically from the mind and not engaging themselves in any kind of spiritual practice, spiritual grounding, rest, even just as simple as rest, right? Word. I'm just like, you are tired and it shows, and like we're all exhausted, right? But I think there's that difference between exhausted and like just the day to day. I'm like, you're not taking basic care of your system in the ways you can. And I noticed that. So my dream is really to like be co-creating spaces in which people feel like, oh, it's okay to stagger. It's okay for all of us to get our needs met. We don't have to deny that apocalypse is happening. We don't have to try to manage or not. It's like, it's okay to take care of ourselves. And it actually creates a better collective container when we're all doing that for the work that we need to do together, which is immense.
Right. Immense. Indeed. Yeah. So thank you. So much of that resonates, particularly on the grief side of things, or the grief facet of the experiences that we're having. I mean, there's this, I'm curious, like, how would you, what is the size of the community that can center during this time, is part of the question I'm carrying from what you just shared. And I'm curious what that looks like. You've led groups of so many different sizes, one of which I was a part of when we first interpersonally met, though I feel like I knew you before.
I know, we've known each other forever.
But we got to meet here in New Orleans for an Emergent Strategy, Emergent Institute in 2019. That was the year, right? That was the year?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was the year.
Like, what the heck? Right? That's what I'm saying. I'm like, wasn't that last year? But like, no. Yes.
Exactly. So that was, I think it was June of 2019. And we got to finally be in physical space together. And, that was a room of somewhere between like 70 to 100 people, I think. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's right at, I think 80, 84, I think was in that class.
Word. And I know you've held space formally and informally, I'm sure, with groups of many different sizes. So I'm curious, in your experience, like, what's the limit of the centering that's possible? Do you have a sense of that? I'm curious.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. It's the question I sit with all the time. So I'm like, ooh, like, what is the, there's different kinds of spaces. I'm like, what's the ideal learning community space, right? So in the space that you were in, one of the things that I have figured out is about 10 people is the max of like what a group can be that can actually pull something off together meaningfully in less than a week of time, right? It's like we can dive in and we can do some kind of transformation. And I think that actually might be about the size. When birds are flocking in massive murmurations, when they're moving like that, they're tracking about 7 other birds is,
Mm-hmm.
it's like between 4 and 7, depending on the size of the flock. And I think that that's something important. And I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe that's also true for us. It's like, if we think about the directions of our, the 4 directions, the 7 directions, some would say, of the human experience,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm like, oh yeah, like I can kind of track that many relationships concurrently, right? I'm like,
Word.
where is everyone, right? Related to me? How are their moods? What is the energy that they're holding? So when I create a space that's larger than that, I'm always looking for how can I create that size group to move within the larger group.
Word.
And that size group will be able to deepen, and in often very profound ways.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely deepen where every single person is getting equal amounts of attention, usually deepening around 1 or 2 people's experiences within that space. So, when I think about what that looks like in a community, I'm
Right.
kind of like, oh, like in my mind, I'm like, I can kind of imagine something where it's like a series of cul-de-sacs, built
Mm-hmm.
around shared garden or shared farmland, shared farm
Mm-hmm.
space, where it's like we're all co-creating, we're feeding, we're eating, and we're responsible for some level of fellowship with each other here.
Hmm.
And we can be part of some larger networks. I think what happens to us in the US experiment right now that's hard is there's such a many varieties at which people are having their intimate community experience. And a lot of people, and especially the more resources you have, the less you even have any of that. So there are now
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people who are like, I have the resources to stay in my house, to have a bunch of stuff like delivered to me. I don't really
Right.
know my neighbors, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe I pass them when I'm walking my dog, but there's no need for each other. We don't lean on each other. I don't depend on them. They don't depend on me. And if something
Mm-hmm.
happened to me, they wouldn't know, or they might not know. Um, or we have networks of people that are all strangers at the level of body, right? I know a
Yes.
ton, especially generationally now. I meet a lot of younger people whose best friends are people that they've never met.
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Mm-hmm.
not physically in a space with. If something happened to them, that those people would not necessarily know or be able to come get them. And I think about that a lot. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I want to
Hmm.
I want to be involved in creating those experiments where there's enough people that multiple people can catch you if something's happening, if you're falling. Um, I have several friend groups now where I very rarely engage in friendship as a one-to-one activity anymore,
Hmm.
right? I mostly engage in friendships that are at least a triad, sometimes a
Hmm.
larger, groups of up to 10 or 11 people again, where it's like, okay, right now I've got a crew of sibling sister goddesses who 3 people are in crisis, and we're really literally kind of delegating our energies between the crises to like make sure
Mm-hmm.
that everyone's needs are met. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there's something at that scale. And then I think about the size of the village, right?
Yeah.
Is what is the scale at which you actually can know who else is around you and what they
Mm-hmm.
can offer and what you can offer them?
Yep.
What is the scale at which you can feel a sense of value in each of the people that you meet, right?
Yes.
And this is like ancient technology. It's like someone makes the bread and someone else makes the jewelry and someone else brings the vegetables and someone brings the fish or whatever it is. Now, the challenge of that is I don't necessarily want to be the bread fish person or whatever, right? I'm the poet, I'm a writer, I'm a visionary. And so I'm really thinking about how to have a community that has all those needs met, that also equally values what culture brings to the table,
Yeah.
what organizing brings to the table, what
Yeah.
facilitation brings. And then I think a lot else about then like internationalism, because I
Hmm.
want that village experience and I also want to still be tied into a global experience. I'm a traveler. I've been nomadic for most of my adult life, and there's something about, to me, there's something important actually. I think if we
Mm-hmm.
end up in a space that's small, that's not also connected,
Right.
we can then lose track with our own evolutionary processes and needs, which come from that. I'm like, monoculturalism doesn't interest me at all.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
those are some thoughts I have on it.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm with you. I have to No, I don't have to, but I choose to be very frank when
Yeah.
I'm in these sort of like, what are we gonna do if the system collapses? When the system collapses conversations, I'm like, y'all, I don't really have a lot of physical material skills. I cook pretty well. So
Yeah,
if other
pretty
people
well,
can grow
passably,
things, I can cook.
right?
I'm good
But
at soup.
not for like necessarily 50 people
I can actually
yet.
cook for 50 people.
I
That
can
I can
do
do.
that. Okay, good.
If it's
I'm gonna
soup
call you.
or
If it's
biscuits,
soup, I can make soup for like whoever.
I can make a lot of biscuits. I could be the biscuit person,
Be the
but here's
biscuit
the thing:
person, Ron.
I
We
can't
found
grow
your
wheat.
role. You don't have to worry now. You have a role. I'm a doula, but I'm like, everybody's not having babies all the time. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but I do, I think in my vision, one of my dreamscapes is I also believe in the possibility of learning continuously, right? So
yeah,
I believe that if it was necessary, I could learn how to do something that
yeah,
needed to be done.
that's
I might
right.
not do it very fast or very
Yeah.
efficiently or particularly well, but I could
Yes,
get something done and I can improve over time. So
that's right.
I just remind myself of that. But the other thing is I think that when I think about the importance of these spaces for visioning and dreaming and the importance of centering visions and dreams in our thinking about what is possible
Yeah,
and in our thinking about what is probable as well, I I think it's very important to honor that we are going to need extremely deft and skilled facilitation, that we
yeah,
are going to need people who know how to say, when we sing together, because of the way that we are communally vibrating, our hearts synchronize and our breaths synchronize. And that is a physical manifestation of what is possible to then do in conversation,
that's right.
right? So, like those intelligences that come from these cultural technologies, those that we've inherited, those that we are elaborating upon and
Yeah,
building, are absolutely essential tools for our well-being, survival, and adaptation to me. And I think what we are experiencing now, to me, is a manifestation of that truth
hmm,
as we experience varying levels of collapse structurally, societally,
that's
social
right.
fabric, etc. And we don't have the I'm thinking of that cheesecloth. I think that it's also I'm thinking about a net or a web, right?
Yes,
That has not been upheld. Like the spider of our culture has not been tending to that net, and it was
yes.
ill-formed anyway. Anyway, that's a terribly like imperfect
I
metaphor,
see what you're
but
doing with the metaphor, and I accept it. I accept it. I mean, and I think it's also something, two things occur to me, which is there's something around like what gets valued.
yeah.
And I feel like I'm detoxing from the value I have had on trying to save the whole world. Like very
Hmm.
early in my life, that started where it was like, you have like whatever you do has to be something that's impacting the whole world, right?
Yes.
You have to save the whole world, the whole country, like all Black people, everybody.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to put on your shoulders at 13, 15, 19 years old. And um, but it seemed very much like that was what I was supposed to be doing, was like this
Yes.
really grand scale work. And I have worked very tirelessly in that effort. But as I'm getting older, and as my practice with emergent strategy particularly is deepening, I'm like, oh, like I literally cannot save the whole world. I cannot
Yes.
save anybody. I literally can't save like one other human being. Like that's not how things work. I
Hmm.
can create conditions that support people to save themselves, and I can create conditions that support communities to see and save themselves.
Yeah.
And even that, I will only ever touch, I don't know why, but there's that Sam Cooke, like, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, that, right? I'm just like, I have that sense of like, whatever the sacred is, that is the miraculous cloth, is the miraculous forward motion. I can only
Mm.
touch the hem of that with my greatest effort.
Mm.
And that's why I write, because I'm like, I can only be in so many rooms, but my words, if I write in this book, I have put in 20 years of facilitation practice. If I write it in this book, maybe that will go further. And if a lot of people touch the hem of this garment, maybe we can pull it, we can pull it, we can change the direction, we can have a bigger impact on that divine direction.
Yeah.
um, and And that becomes interesting to me. And in a way, it's like, oh, you're still trying to save the world, Adrienne. But now it feels much more of like, I'm trying to be a part of a collective of people. And there's so much surrender in that, because it's like,
Yeah.
I literally can only do so much.
Mm-hmm.
And as I get older, that muchness is shrinking. Like, it's like,
Or
as I reach more people, I become aware of how shallow the celebrity culture is, how shallow the, you know, just what you can do at a distance has a shallowness to it. And what you can do, you know, COVID has been so deep, because I'm like, okay, I am doing a lot more deeply by video and at a distance than I thought was possible, but I can still feel the absence of what happens in a room of people together, what happens in a community of people together. And I miss that. And I think it's necessary for the kind of changes we make. I'm very interested in, like, on the other side of this experience, this round of COVID and getting to vaccines and cures and other stuff, what kind of communities people will want to create, prepare ourselves for the next time. Because I'm like, I actually want to be in community where we're like, oh, this is the adaptation we need to make. We're all deeply aligned that we're quickly making it together, and we're together. And by making it quickly together, we get to still be held and care for children and go outside, and, you know, because we adapt quickly. Like, I want spaces like that where our desire to adapt and our shared values is what brings us into the container together.
Yeah. I too want to be a part of that. I've been thinking a lot about how folks will reconfigure domesticity and cohabitation and proximity, physical proximity to those they love, and or want to be in community with. And people ask me why I love New Orleans as much as I do. It's because it's a place where I felt the most palpable, as in physical, sense of community in my life. Where there is a value of a co-presence that is embodied with your neighbors and with those you say you're in community with. We eat and do and make costumes and sing, and like is in the fabric of the cultural being here to be in communion physically with other people. And that feels like community in a way that is very special to me, and that lives into some values that were very theoretical, I think, for a time for me.
Well, and I have to say, as you mentioned New Orleans, I have to shout out, today is Sage Crump's birthday.
Yes, I knew we were going to have to do that at some point.
You just have to say, it's Sage Crump's
happy birthday to you.
Exactly. Happy birthday, Sage Crump. You know? So Sage is part of the Emergent Strategy Ideation Institute team. And part of the reason Sage is on that team is because of, you know, being in that immersion together and watching how she moves and how she sings and how she is, and being like, I want to learn from her and be in community with her. But, you know, I'm also in Detroit for similar reasons. Like, I had been in New York, I had been in California, and I felt like a lot of people in those spaces talked about community. But then when I would come to Detroit, it was like, these people really like know each other and are kind of like each other's business, you know? Now I still struggle with that. I still struggle with that because I'm an introverted person, you know, or Instagram introvert, you know, instaverted. But, you know, I'm still most comfortable with some distance and with like kind of being in my little hermit cave, writing things down. So I'm like learning, you know, my neighbor will be like, oh, I made some kanji, or I did this, you know, like I learned, you know, like a lot of my community effort is like, here's a gift I'm leaving on your doorstep, or that kind of thing. And I'm learning to also let that be okay. Like, my way of doing community is still not a extroverted experience of community, you know. Like I feel like I want to be able to be the community hermit, and maybe when I'm older, like in another 20, 30 years, the community wise woman or something, you know. I'm like, I just imagine myself kind of like gray with like flowers in my hair, and just being like, people drop by sometimes to be like, what do I do about love? What do I do about this conflict or something? I'm like, I have thoughts on that. You know, that feels like it would be sweet. Yeah.
This excites me. I'm totally visioning myself, if I am blessed with a long life, as like
Oh my
very
God,
much a
really
grandma on a
shallow.
porch with a rocking chair.
Yes.
I don't know about flowers, maybe. I just am so excited about having the like cultural acceptance of being a crotchety, malcontented person who
Yes.
sits on a porch and lovingly engages everyone in their crotchety, like
That's right. I
malcontentedness.
mean,
Like
there's something
that's,
so
yes.
beautiful about, and it's taken me a while to understand this, but like all the elders that I've been drawn to are kind of like strongly boundaried, might be the best way to describe it, and like
Mm,
not fake. And I'm like, there's
mm,
something so compelling to me about people where you show up and they're just like, that's a no. And
yes.
this is the end of my time. Now it's time for you
Yes.
to go. Like Grace Lee Boggs, you know,
Yes.
my mentor, when I met her, she was in her 90s, and it was just so great because you'd show up and she'd be like, oh, it's good to see you. Okay, going to bed now. You know, like she just was like,
Mm,
I love you. It's all good. I'm gonna take care of myself. And I'm not gonna offer an apology for that. And I feel like the
mm-hmm.
unlearning that it takes to actually be in community is to unlearn the lying that we learn
Hmm.
of capitalist community, right? The
Yes.
performance of community, the hallmark card of
Yes.
community, and like actually dropping into, oh, community means you show up as you are and
Mm-hmm.
you're with people who accept you as you are and they're grateful for how you are and what you bring.
Yes.
Um, and then you get to choose, you know, there's people I don't like. And I'm like, I want to be able to be in community with people I don't like, where I don't
Mm,
have to fake that. You know, you're just like, we don't like each other, but you're really good at that thing, you know, and I'm really good at this thing. And like, we contribute to our community. And I don't think you have to like each other to share values. So I've been thinking a lot about this because we're in this moment now where the big
yeah.
push, you know, the big language push is unity, 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 you know, and I'm just like, I don't want to be in community with people who don't want to be alive and who aren't wanting to find ways to be in collaboration and to actually
Girl.
work with each other and survive. I don't want to be in community like that. I can be in community with people who I don't like. I can be in community with people who get on my nerves. You know, I've
Yes.
done that before. I've worked with people before. I was like, girl, but now, you know, I'm getting the taste of something different. Like
Yes.
I centered my pleasure activism means that I really moved to like, what would it look like if my whole life was driven by an orgasmic yes? And that I used
Mm-hmm.
that
Come
kind
on.
of deep yes to set boundaries, to do my
Mm-hmm.
spells and my witch work. Like, what would it look like if yes was at the heart of those things?
Yep.
And now it feels like, you know, I'm like, my coworkers are people where every single time I see them, I'm just like, yes, I can't believe I get
Yes.
to spend time with you. And
Yes.
my collaborators are like that. I'm like, holy shit, like we're
Mm-hmm.
doing this, you know?
Yep.
And it turns out now you can get to a place where I'm like, there's too many orgasmic yes things to say yes to. Now I have to start to prioritize even more within that to be
Yep.
like, yes, all of these things feel great, but singing feels the best and
Mm-hmm.
writing fiction feels the best, you know? And like,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So then it's just like, oh, if I embody that, can that itself be of use to the world, right? To be like, here's a
Yes, it
fat
can.
black queer woman who is living on yes, and this is what it
Yes.
looks like. This is what it creates in the world. Um, this is what creates in a community. You know, I love the idea of you know, new metaphor, right? But like of a building being built, it's like you have a cornerstone, and I think of that, and the cornerstone is just there for however long the building stands. You don't pay attention to it. It's not like the grand
Mm-hmm.
opening. It's not the stained glass window. It's not the buttresses inside. It's the cornerstone that's just over there. But I love the idea of just being like that for future communities built around joy and built around yes, is to be like, I just want to be a cornerstone of those kind of structures, of those kind of communities. Like, I don't need a lot of attention on like my name or this is what she did, here's her bio, whatever. I'm just like, no, just like she was a fucking joyful black woman, like one of the freest black women to ever live for her time. And she
Mm.
focused on joy. And when kids saw her, they came running and were happy. And, you know, and it was like, oh, and she was in touch with her rage and she was in touch with her discontent and her revolutionary spirit. and this is how she chose to spend her life. You know, I'm like, that's a good cornerstone. And then what gets built, if a lot of people are like, I just want to be a brick, I want to be a cornerstone, I want to be the foundation, instead of I want to be the star, I want to be the influencer, I want to be the lead, I want to be the director. I'm like, I think more of us have to just be like, that's not where the real power is. The real power is like, how close to the earth can I get and be a part of holding something, you know? So yeah, I've been really in that reflection lately as I'm like, oh, you get lifted up and then you're just like floating around in the sky. I'm like, I'm an earth sign. Put me in earth. You know?
Yeah.
In the
That
age of Aquarius, of course I say this as we enter the but
it's mutable earth, you
it's
know? It's
mutable
got
earth,
motion in
baby.
it. I have a rising Virgo. I appreciate
I know
Virgo
you do.
energy. You know, I like to think of the Virgo temple priestess style Virgo, which for me
Yeah.
in my practice is all about creating a space for people to have sacred experiences.
Exactly.
That for me is Virgo energy. Virgo
That's the
energy
thing.
is mutable in that what I understand is how things need to flow in this space,
Yes.
but it's about flow. It's not about rigidity and just
No,
about
it's
lists
about
or a
flow and
certain
like
order
how
of
to create the
operation.
best possible flow. And it is
Yeah,
divine hospitality. It's
it
like, oh,
is.
like,
Yes.
you know, how can I, and I think of it in the container of the body too. Like, how can I help your shoulders to drop so that you can actually feel the container you're in all the time? Like, that I did not create and that I could not recreate. Like, you have the structure already. Like, you just need to embody it, live in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one more question? How are you?
Yeah.
All right.
You're doing good.
Because I think that sometimes when we have conversations about dreaming and visioning, for those who are erring on the side of the pragmatic and practical, which I appreciate, we need folks who are all about like, well, how do we do this? I'm so here for that question.
That's right.
So, Adrienne, I'm curious for you, what does visioning and dreaming look like for you in practice, and or how do you make space in your life to dream and vision, knowing in this hyper-capitalist productive neurosis syndrome in which we all live, people often say, I don't have time, or I don't have space.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you, the making of time and space for the dream work?
I like that question. You know, it's so interesting that, like, I definitely am like, yeah, I'm dreaming. I'm trying to focus on vision. I'm trying to see as far as I can all the time. But in my day-to-day life, I feel like I'm very much the pragmatic person in a lot of my relationships and friendships. You know, I'm the one who's like, let's make sure we've got the grocery list together and that we got everything that we need and that we have the ingredients so that we can actually make the dishes. Let's plan the dishes we want. Let's like think about like, what are the structures, you know? My friend, the friend that I'm visiting right now, we have like an annual practice where I come and like Virgo out her life. And to me, that's very much what I think of as like dreaming, but putting it into reality is like, she has a dream for her life and I have a dream of her happiness. And then the thing that I can contribute to it on like a nearly annual basis is to come in and be like, here's the order that I can offer, the order and the structures that I can offer that will help create that flow, right, for your happiness. So that's one way. I think another way is really getting into a practice of authentic and honest communication. I think so often people think of dreaming like as it's like something over there, something far away. But for me, I'm like, if I am at as honest as I can be in the present moment, a lot of what I say sounds like a dream, right? Like if I'm like, you know, if someone says something, I'm just like, that's racist. I would love to be in a scenario where I never had to hear another racist thing again, and I didn't have any structures around me trying to support racism. That's like my truth. And I think it's the most pragmatic way that we could coexist together on the planet and actually make a real play for getting to be here long term as a species. It sounds like a dream to people, but I'm like, it is like the most practical thing we could do is unlearning racism. The most practical thing we could do is relinquishing patriarchy. The most practical thing that we could do is really unhitching ourselves from the train of capitalism and figuring out other economic systems that are cooperative, not just amongst humans, but with the planet. To me, those things are pragmatic because the divisiveness actually makes us cause harm to the one thing that we actually have, which is the body, the planet as body, and our bodies as body. All we actually have, gold, diamonds, all that other stuff, it's like transient in nature, it's temporary in nature, it's something that came from the earth and will return to the earth, right? We have the present moment on the earth to live together. And so to me, all the stuff around like we learning to live together, as Octavia Butler said, embrace diversity, like all of that is just like, that to me is the most pragmatic way I can understand trying to be here. And and then I'm also really into the pragmatism of things that work. So, you know, in the immersions, when we came together for the immersions, there was a moment in the immersion where like a great feeling of harm had come up. And we held it together in circle as a community. And then afterwards, a stone was offered, and it was thrown, and it was cracked open, and there was this massive release. So some might look at that and be like, ooh, that's all woo-woo, that's all dreamy, that's all this. And I was like, but also it was led by Black women, and it was exactly what was needed. It took, actually, it was a very efficient way. We went directly at naming the harm that had happened and what was needed, and then we moved it. And I'm like, now I hear regularly from people who are in that immersion about how they're working with each other, surviving with each other, adapting with each other, and that what we did in that room changed what was possible for what could happen in the community. So to me, I'm like, then I didn't come up with what the community chose to do there. The community came up with what they needed. So to me, I'm like, what I learned, the most practical thing is give the community space to create the rituals it needs for its own healing and for getting into right relationship. Take the space, get into right relationship. And this works too at the grandest scale of facilitation I've done. You know, the most effective Black organizing that's happening in the country right now is being done by organizations that took some time to be like, how do we be in right relationship with each other? And those that did not take the time to focus on relationship are falling apart, you know, imploding. So it's like, it is actually the most pragmatic thing to do things that for some seem, oh, so visionary. I'm like, no, it's just a basic thing. Like, we come out of the womb into someone else's hands. Our human system is designed to be in relationship. So it's always the most pragmatic thing to be like, let's make sure the relationships are good, you know? And that's also the indigenous wisdom that really resonates to me is like, you're not just in relationship with those who look like you, race-wise or species-wise. You're in relationship with everything. And so it's pragmatic to tune in and be like, how are these relationships? Am I taking or giving too much? Right? Yeah.
Yes. I love this question.
I'm
learning so much hearing people respond to it. It's really, it's so good.
Beautiful.
I would like to share something with you.
Yeah?
Is
it a song? Is it a poem? What is it? A thought?
I actually do have a song. Let me share this one thing though. Let me share this other thing first. So I pulled some cards before we chatted because I needed to ground. I always spend my mornings in prayer and meditation. Back to the importance of centering practice.
We're the same person, Ron.
We are a facet of a similar spirit for sure.
Yeah.
And I have this book from Sharon Bridgeforth, this booklet, Dim Blessings, from that Black mermaid man lady. And there's an oracle deck that goes along with this that Sharon gifted to me. But these blessings are really beautiful. And so I drew some cards and I did my woo over there, but then I was like, I'm gonna do a little numerological thing with these cards and see which blessing is here for me and for Adrienne today. So I would like to share that blessing with you.
Yes, please.
From Sharon. It is Dim Blessings number 38. And it says, remember, hummingbirds follow you. Bees rest on you, but don't sting. Butterflies are everywhere. Pay attention. Love is in the air. Dim Blessings number 38 by Sharon Bridgeforth.
Yes. Yes.
That's what Spirit had to say to you and me today.
I really love that.
Yeah.
And the timing is good for that.
Love is in the air and
In the
everywhere.
air.
Yes.
All around.
Yes. I do have a song.
I know. It's like, you gonna sing for me now?
I've been writing little songs. And for real though, Adrienne, I really appreciate the Instagram offerings where you're just like, here's a little ditty that came to me today.
Yes.
I love that. As a person who sings, it brings me so much joy to hear people singing in any form.
Yay.
So I was like, let me just take a little inspiration from my friend and like write little songs. So you heard one of them, which
Yes.
was about white supremacist delusion. Thank you,
fucking
Sonia
love that
Renee
song.
Taylor. But I wrote a reparations song
I'm here
the
for
other
it.
day. I don't know how much of it I'll remember, but I'll do what I can to remember it. No. Yes, well, yes, and actually the song. Here we go. This is the one. This is the one for right now. This is the one. In the spirit of my elders, ancestors, and co-teachers of freedom singing.
Great.
This song came to me the other day while I was walking to visit the chime tree in City Park. It goes like this. I appreciate your magic. Thank you for being here. Doom, doom, doom. I appreciate your magic, Adrienne. Thank you for being here. And then you can put in other things you appreciate. People like, I appreciate your light. Yes. Thank you for being here. And then you can say things like, I appreciate your anger. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And you can just go on and on and on.
I appreciate your song.
Hey.
Thank you for singing it here.
Yeah.
I appreciate your talking.
Come on.
Thank you for talking here.
Hey.
I love it. That's easy. I can work with that.
Yeah, please use it, sing it, harmonize with it.
I keep feeling that way. I'm just like, and so one of the ways that I'm like, oh, something is shifting collectively, right? Like there are these moments of great shift, and I'm like, I am feeling so much song in me right now.
Yes.
And there's songs like for everything, you know, like every single thing that happens, I'm just like, I am full of rage, full of rage, full of rage, full of rage. And it's just like comes out, I'm like, yes, I'm full of rage, full of rage. You know, and it's just like, ah. And I'm like, what's that happening? But I'm like, I can only do it in song right now. I can only do it in song. And it's been such a blessing again to be around this child right now, because if I turn to her, you know, the other day I was like, we need to eat our breakfast now. Yes. And she's like, yes, I need my oatmeal now. And it's like, yes, like she just picks it up and she's like, no problem. Like life is the musical. And yes, it is. We all sing how we sing, and it's just fantastic that we're doing that. And I'm like, it's so helpful to me, like whatever dream I have of community, which doesn't include my own children, includes many children.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And children singing and people just randomly singing in some collective kitchen or out in the work field or wherever it needs to happen. It's just like, what we know is we survive through the breath. And the breath is the song, and the song is the dance, and the dance is the community. It's like we're moving. So thank you for that.
Ashe.
Yeah.
Thank you for you, and thank you for being here on What's the Big Idea. It's been
Thanks
such
for
a
starting
treat.
this podcast, Ron.
Yay! Thank you. It was one of them things. It was like, you must do this. So exactly. I said, okay.
You're like, okay, I guess that's my next task then.
I guess so. Adrienne, thanks again. Everybody who's tuning in, the next episode is in 2 weeks, pretty much every first and third Thursday with Carlton Turner of Sip Culture. Please check out the full lineup at ronreagan.com/WTBI. And, you know, follow Adrienne. Bio is in the YouTube notes. I'll have some links and stuff in there so you can check out Adrienne's latest work. And we shall continue syncing together, my friend.
For sure. For sure. Thank you so much, love.
Blessings to everybody. Peace.